I'm 32, and I would describe myself as a laid-back individual, but we all have our breaking points. I have a steady job that covers my expenses, and for the last couple of years, I've been living alone. I'm in a relationship with my girlfriend, and while it's not perfect, it's good enough that a few months ago, I started picturing a future together. She brought up the idea of going on a proper holiday, a real extended getaway, not just a quick weekend trip. Cancun seemed like the perfect spot, offering the chance to relax and soak up the sun. It sounded like exactly what we both needed. We flew out on Friday morning, and she seemed unusually excited, almost bubbly. I figured it was just the thrill of the trip, but looking back, there were small signs I ignored. For instance, she kept glancing at her phone during the flight. Whenever I looked over, she'd quickly swipe the screen. I teased her, asked if there was something urgent that couldn't wait a few hours, and she brushed it off, claiming it was just work-related. By the time we landed, I had convinced myself I was just being paranoid. The first couple of days were great. We relaxed by the pool, checked out local restaurants, and snapped silly photos like any couple on vacation. But by day 3, something started to feel off. She kept stepping away to take calls for work, which struck me as odd, since she had insisted on taking the afternoon off to unwind. Then she told me she was going to check out some shops down the street. She asked if I wanted to join, but I was feeling lazy, lounging on a deck chair with a cocktail in hand. I told her I was fine and just to bring me something interesting. Her smile seemed forced, almost as though she was relieved that I'd stayed behind. Something about her energy shifted, and for reasons I couldn't explain, I decided to follow her. I waited a few minutes, then casually walked toward the shops. It didn't take long before I spotted her. She was sitting in a cafe, but she wasn't alone. Across from her was a man I instantly recognized, her ex-boyfriend. They were laughing together, sharing some private joke. Now, let me pause to explain. G and this guy had a complicated past. They had been on and off for years before we met. She'd sworn to me that it was over, even showing messages where she told him to leave her alone. But seeing them together now felt like a punch to the gut. I didn't want to confront her right then. I wasn't ready for that kind of confrontation. But I couldn't just walk away. I stepped back and used my phone to discreetly take some photos. I followed them from a distance as they left the cafe and made their way to a nearby park. They looked so at ease with each other, too comfortable. At one point, she even hugged him before they parted ways. I could have confronted her right then, but I didn't. I wanted to see how far this went. When she returned to the hotel, she was practically glowing. The shops were great, and I got you this, she said, handing me a tacky souvenir keychain. I forced a smile, taking it from her. Thanks. Did you have a good time? I asked, playing along. Yes, it was nice to get out and have some fun, she replied, not a hint of guilt in her tone. That night, while she was in the shower, I did something I never imagined I would do. I went through her phone. I know it wasn't the wisest move, but I needed answers. The messages I found confirmed everything. They had been planning this for weeks. This holiday wasn't just a romantic trip for us. It was a cover for her to meet up with him. She told him she missed him, that she still thought about him, and that she needed to end things with me. The next day, I acted like nothing had changed. We went snorkeling, had lunch, and even took a sunset stroll on the beach. But throughout it all, I was mentally preparing for the next step. That evening, I told her I wasn't feeling well and wanted to stay in. She seemed disappointed but didn't push me to join her. When she casually mentioned she might go out for a while, I simply nodded, trying to keep my tone neutral. As soon as she left, I sprang into action. I packed my bags, called the airline, and booked a flight back home. Then I went to the front desk and canceled our room, pretending it was due to an emergency. When she returned to the hotel in the middle of the night, I was already gone. I left her a note that simply read, I know about your little reunion with him. I hope it was worth it. The room has been canceled, and I'm on my way home. Good luck. It may have been harsh, but she deserved it. As I flew back home, I reflected on the last 2 years. I realized how many red flags I had ignored. The secret texts, her flimsy excuses, and the lingering presence of her ex. I couldn't help but feel like a fool for not seeing things sooner. But what really gave me a sense of satisfaction was that when I got home, I made sure to cut all ties. I blocked her on everything: phone, social media, email. I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. A few days later, some mutual friends started reaching out. Apparently, G had been on the phone crying and claiming that I had abandoned her in Mexico. One of them asked me, "Didn't she tell you why?" I replied, "What did she say?" They mentioned that she just said I freaked out and left her there. I sent them the screenshots and photos I'd taken, and soon enough they stopped trying to defend her. The consequences for G were severe. She had to book a last-minute, expensive flight home. When she finally explained the situation, her ex disappeared from the picture, and her friends started distancing themselves as the truth got out. As for me, I'm doing well, better than ever. Ending that relationship was the smartest decision I've made. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's to trust my instincts and never let anyone take advantage of me. I never imagined things would end like this, but G clearly wasn't the kind of person who would handle it quietly. A week after I returned home, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. It didn't take long to realize it was from her. The email was all over the place. Half-hearted apologies, weak excuses, and outright lies. She claimed that the meeting with her ex had been a spur-of-the-moment decision and that it wasn't planned. She begged me to talk to her and insisted I misunderstood everything. What was there to misunderstand? I had the photos, the messages, the proof. I ignored her email. A few days later, one of her friends called me, saying, "You really hurt her. You've made her feel awful." I responded, "I don't believe it. You don't even know what she did." The friend then tried to justify G's actions, saying she had met her ex, but that it wasn't what I thought. I sarcastically asked, "Oh, so sneaking up to hug him shows how honest she was?" I forwarded the same screenshots to the friend, and that was the end of that conversation. For a while, I thought that would be the last I'd hear from her, but she kept going. She started spreading new stories about me, that I was controlling, paranoid, and ruined our holiday because I couldn't handle her being friends with her ex. She even claimed I had stolen some of her things when I left, which was ridiculous since I barely had time to pack my own bags. She posted these lies on social media, painting herself as a victim of my so-called jealous outbursts. I didn't care about her lies, but I didn't expect her to go as far as she did. One morning, I woke up to a text from my boss. I was confused, so I called and asked what was going on. He told me they had received an email claiming that I was acting erratically and might pose a threat to the team. It contained screenshots of messages where I allegedly admitted to being emotionally unstable. Felt like a punch to the gut. G had forged screenshots to make it appear that I was losing my temper and threatening people. The forged documents were clumsy, filled with typos and odd formatting, but still disturbing. Luckily, my boss and HR recognized it as a prank, but the damage to my reputation had been done. I consulted a lawyer and sent her a cease and desist letter. She ranted in all caps that I was ruining her life. In the end, she destroyed herself. Her reputation was shattered, and she disappeared. Revenge isn't always the answer, but in this case it felt justified.